December 1986. 8 months have passed since the explosion that tore Reactor 4 apart at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in northern Ukraine. The building has been partially entombed in concrete and steel, a structure the Soviets call the sarcophagus. From the outside, it looks contained, sealed, safe. But inside, in the flooded basement corridors beneath the destroyed reactor, a team of Soviet scientists is moving through the dark. They are wearing respirators, lead-lined aprons, and dosimeters. The dosimeters are screaming. They stop at a doorway. Room 217 of the lower biological shield. Through it, barely visible in the beam of a handheld flashlight, they can see something sitting on the floor. It is black, roughly 2 meters wide. Its surface is wrinkled and folded in on itself. Thick, textured ridges running in every direction, like the hide of some enormous animal. It looks organic. It looks ancient. One member of the team raises a camera, frames the shot from the doorway, and takes a single photograph. Then they run. Later, developing the film, they notice the image is already beginning to fog. The camera itself had started to be irradiated by proximity alone. The object in that photograph is now known as the elephant's foot, and in 1986, standing within 1 meter of it for fewer than 5 minutes would deliver a lethal dose of radiation. This is the story of what the elephant's foot is, how it formed, what it does to the human body, and why, nearly 4 decades after the worst nuclear disaster in history, it is still not safe to approach. To understand the elephant's foot, you have to first understand the people who risked everything to document it. In the months and years following the disaster, the Soviet government assembled a small group of nuclear scientists and engineers, men who volunteered or were assigned to go where no one else would go, into the destroyed building, into the rooms where the radiation levels were still lethal. Their job was to understand what had happened to the reactor's fuel, where it had gone, what it had become. The man who became most closely associated with the elephant's foot was a Ukrainian nuclear safety inspector named Arthur Korneyev. Korneyev was not a liquidator in the conventional sense. He was not one of the thousands of young men handed a shovel and 30 seconds on the roof to clear graphite blocks. He was a scientist, methodical, deliberate. And over the course of years, not a single visit, he returned again and again to the sub-basement of Reactor 4, getting closer to the elephant's foot each time. That photograph, Korneyev standing next to the most radioactive object on Earth, posing, is one of the most bizarre images to come out of Chernobyl. He is grinning. He looks at ease. Whether that is courage, resignation, or something else, nobody outside his mind can say. What we know is this. By the time that photograph was taken in the mid-1990s, Korneyev had been exposed to significant radiation across his many visits to the site. His eyesight had been severely damaged. He had developed cataracts, a known consequence of high radiation exposure to the lens of the eye. He reportedly struggled with other health problems. He continued going back anyway, but Korneyev was not the first. Before any human being entered those basement rooms, the Soviets sent machines, simple wheeled platforms carrying cameras, Soviet-made because imported electronics were unavailable under Cold War sanctions. And one by one, those cameras fried themselves within meters of the elephant's foot. The radiation levels in the room didn't just kill living things. They killed electronics. They scrambled film. They erased data from early instruments. The elephant's foot was hostile to observation in every form. It took months of improvised engineering, shielded housings, simpler mechanisms, film cameras mounted on dolly platforms guided by rope, before scientists got their first clear look at what was sitting in that basement. What they found would take years to fully understand. To understand what the elephant's foot is, you have to go back to April 26, 1986, 1:23 in the morning. Inside Reactor 4, a safety test is underway. The test is designed to find out whether the reactor's turbines, coasting down after a shutdown, could generate enough electricity to power the plant's emergency cooling pumps in the event of a power failure. It is, on paper, a routine engineering experiment, but it is being conducted by a night shift crew who have not been trained for it. The day shift, the one that was briefed, had gone home. And critically, in order to begin the test, the operators have disabled several of the reactor's core safety systems. The RBMK reactor, the type used at Chernobyl, had a design flaw that Soviet engineers knew about and did not adequately address. When the reactor was running at low power, as it was during this test, steam bubbles forming in the cooling water could actually increase reactivity rather than reduce it. This was called a positive void coefficient. In simple terms, the reactor could accelerate its own destruction. At 1:23:40 a.m., an emergency shutdown is initiated. The control rods begin to lower into the reactor to stop the reaction. But the rods have graphite tips, and those graphite tips, as they enter the reactor, cause a brief spike in power before the rods can slow anything down. In the next 3 seconds, the power output of Reactor 4 surges to approximately 10 times its rated maximum. The water in the cooling channels flashes instantly to steam. The pressure blows the 1,000-ton reactor lid, a concrete and steel disc the weight of a jumbo jet, straight off the top of the reactor. 2 explosions. The first is a steam explosion from the superheated water. The second, scientists still debate its exact nature, may have been a prompt criticality event, a brief, violent burst of nuclear fission. The roof of the reactor building is gone. The core is open to the sky. Graphite blocks from the reactor core, each one intensely radioactive, are scattered across the plant grounds and roof of the adjacent building. Firefighters arrive within minutes. They pick up the graphite blocks with their bare hands because they don't know what they are. They think they are ordinary pieces of concrete. Inside the destroyed reactor, the temperature is rising. The remaining nuclear fuel, uranium oxide, contained in hundreds of fuel rods, begins to melt, and it does not stop at the bottom of the reactor vessel. Because the reactor vessel has been compromised, the fuel melts through. What happens next is one of the most extreme physical processes in the history of industrial accidents. The molten fuel, now mixed with fragments of graphite, steel, zirconium from the fuel rod cladding, and sand that was dumped from helicopters in the days after the explosion, creates a new substance. Scientists would later call it corium. At its formation temperature, it is estimated to be between 1,660 and 2,600 degrees Celsius. Hot enough to melt most metals on Earth, hot enough to liquefy concrete itself. This corium begins to flow downward, through the floor of the reactor, through the passages below, into the pipes and corridors of the lower levels of the building. It encounters a large sealed room in the basement, a water bubble suppression chamber, partially flooded. Soviet engineers recognize immediately what this means. If the corium reaches that water, if thousands of degrees of molten nuclear material contacts a significant body of water, the resulting steam explosion could be catastrophic. It could destroy what remains of the containment structure. It could spread radioactive debris across a far wider area. Someone has to go in and drain the water, by hand, before the corium gets there. 3 men volunteer: Alexei Ananenko, Valery Bespalov, and Boris Baranov. Engineers. They put on wetsuits and dosimeters and wade into the flooded basement, water contaminated with radioactive debris, to manually open the drainage valves. They succeed. The water drains. The catastrophic steam explosion does not happen. For years, a myth circulated that all 3 men died within days. It was not true. Ananenko and Bespalov were alive as recently as 2020. Baranov died in 2005 of heart failure, not acute radiation syndrome. But the fact that the myth spread so readily tells you something about what the world believed was possible inside that building. The corium, now without a large water body to detonate against, continues to flow and cool over the following days. By the time Soviet scientists are able to begin investigating the lower levels in autumn of 1986, the corium has solidified. It has hardened into an irregular mass, spreading in some places, forming stalactites in others. In room 217, it has pooled into a roughly circular shape, approximately 2 meters across, its surface cooled into wrinkled folded ridges. The scientists give it a name: the elephant's foot. Now we come to what the elephant's foot actually is, what it's made of, what it does, because understanding the physics of this object is the only way to understand why the men who photographed it are not simply unlucky. They are, by any rational measure, among the most irradiated human beings who ever voluntarily stood upright and walked away. The elephant's foot is composed primarily of uranium dioxide from the fuel rods, mixed with melted zircaloy from the rod cladding, graphite from the reactor moderator, steel from the structural components, and silicon dioxide and calcium oxide from the concrete it burned through. It is, chemically speaking, a ceramic glass. It is not liquid, it is not powder. It is a hard, brittle, glassy mass, and embedded throughout it at concentrations that are difficult to fully quantify even today is nuclear fuel. Not spent fuel. Active fuel, uranium-235 that was in the middle of a fission chain reaction when the reactor exploded. When the first dosimeter readings were taken from the doorway of room 217 in December 1986, the instruments returned a figure of approximately 8,000 Röntgens per hour. 8,000 Röntgens per hour. A lethal dose for 50% of exposed adults is 400 to 500 Röntgens total. Let that number work on you for a moment. 8,000 Röntgens per hour means 133 Röntgens per minute, means 2.2 Röntgens per second. Means that standing at the doorway of that room, not touching the object, not approaching it, simply standing in the doorway, you would absorb a lethal dose of radiation in approximately 3 to 4 minutes. Not sick in 3 to 4 minutes. The radiation sickness itself would not begin for hours. What would happen is invisible and immediate. High-energy gamma rays and beta particles would penetrate your clothing, your skin, your organs, and begin destroying the DNA inside your cells. You would feel, at first, nothing unusual. The first symptom of acute radiation syndrome at this dose would arrive within 30 to 60 minutes. Nausea, a metallic taste, a feeling of warmth across the skin. Then, around 6 hours later, something that doctors call the latent period would begin. The nausea would subside. You would feel almost normal. This is sometimes called the walking ghost phase. The body's brief illusion of recovery before the damage already done begins to manifest. In the days that follow, your bone marrow, the system that produces your blood cells, would begin to fail. Your white blood cell count would collapse, leaving you defenseless against infection. Your platelets would drop and you would begin bleeding internally. Your hair would fall out in clumps. Your intestinal lining would slough away. At the doses received from standing near the elephant's foot in 1986, survival without immediate and aggressive medical intervention, blood transfusions, bone marrow transplants, sterile isolation, was essentially zero. And yet men went in. The grain you see in the photographs from inside Reactor 4 is not just poor Soviet film quality, it is radiation exposing the film itself, even inside the camera. Even during the fraction of a second the shutters open. Korneyev understood this. He knew what the dosimeters read. He went in anyway, multiple times across multiple years, getting progressively closer. He wore protective clothing, but protective clothing does not stop gamma radiation. It can only slow it. He managed his exposure by minimizing his time inside the room, moving quickly, taking his readings and leaving. It is a form of courage that is difficult to fully articulate. It is also, depending on your view, a form of madness. Over the years, scientists noticed that the elephant's foot was changing. Its outer surface, the crust formed when the corium first cooled, was becoming brittle. It was crumbling. And as it crumbled, fine radioactive dust was falling to the floor of room 217, becoming airborne whenever anyone entered, posing an additional inhalation hazard on top of the external gamma exposure. The object was, in a sense, slowly dissolving into the room around it, but it was not becoming less dangerous. In 2016, Ukraine completed the new safe confinement, a 36,000-ton arched steel structure, 108 meters tall and 257 meters wide, built over the remains of Reactor 4. It is the largest movable structure ever constructed by human beings. It was designed to contain the site for at least 100 years. The elephant's foot is still inside. By 2001, radiation levels near the object had dropped to approximately 34 Röntgens per hour. Still dangerous. A full day's exposure without protection would be fatal. but no longer instantly deadly at the doorway. Scientists were able to enter the room with appropriate shielding and time their visits carefully. And that reduction in radiation gave researchers something they had not previously been able to do: study the elephant's foot in detail. What they found was not reassuring. The elephant's foot is not inert. It is not simply a hardened lump of radioactive material slowly cooling into stability. Embedded within its mass, nuclear fission reactions are still occurring. In small, scattered pockets within the corium, uranium nuclei are still splitting, still releasing energy, still producing neutrons. For decades, the fission rate was considered low and declining, a remnant of the original chain reaction, winding down as the fuel became depleted. But in 2021, scientists monitoring the elephant's foot reported something unexpected. The rate of fission reactions inside the corium had been increasing. Between 2016 and 2021, neutron counts from inside the elephant's foot increased by approximately 40%. The suspected cause, water. The new safe confinement, while a vast improvement over the original sarcophagus, is not perfectly sealed. Water seeps in, and water, in nuclear physics, acts as a neutron moderator. It slows neutrons down, which makes them more likely to cause additional fission events. The water that was seeping through the ruins of Reactor 4 was, in a small but measurable way, waking the elephant's foot back up. The scientists who published this finding were careful to say that a self-sustaining chain reaction, a criticality event, remained unlikely. The geometry of the corium, the concentration of the fuel, and the lack of a consistent water source all work against it. But unlikely and impossible are not the same word. Engineers are currently developing remote-controlled drilling systems to access parts of the corium that cannot be safely reached by humans. The plan is to insert monitoring instruments, neutron detectors and dosimeters, directly into the elephant's foot to track its behavior in real time. It is an extraordinary engineering challenge. The equipment must survive radiation levels that destroy conventional electronics within hours. The access points must be drilled through layers of concrete and steel that have been warped and distorted by the original explosion. And the whole operation must be conducted without disturbing the corium in ways that might increase its instability. As of today, the elephant's foot sits in room 217, approximately 2 meters wide, its surface slowly degrading. Its radiation levels, while lower than in 1986, are still lethal for unprotected exposure. The fission reactions within it continue. The structure around it continues to be monitored around the clock. Arthur Korneyev, who once stood next to it and grinned for the camera, whose repeated visits left him with damaged eyes and a body that absorbed more radiation than most people will ever know, is today an old man. He spent years helping to document what Chernobyl left behind. He is not celebrated the way the firefighters are. He does not have monuments. But without the scientists who went into those basement rooms and looked at what the reactor had become, we would know far less about the long-term behavior of nuclear materials after a meltdown. Every nuclear safety protocol that has been written or revised since Chernobyl has been informed, in some part, by what men like Korneyev saw in those corridors. The elephant's foot will remain radioactive for thousands of years. It will outlast the steel arch that covers it. It will outlast the Ukrainian state that now maintains it. It will outlast every person alive today. In the basement of a destroyed reactor, in a room that no human being can safely enter without precision planning and protective equipment, the remains of 180 tons of nuclear fuel sit in wait. And they are, in the smallest and most carefully monitored ways, still active. If you are new to this channel, this is what we do here. Real incidents, named events, the engineering failures, human decisions, and physical forces that produce them. No speculation, no dramatization beyond the facts themselves. Because the facts, as this story demonstrates, require no embellishment. The elephant's foot killed no one directly. The disaster that created it killed dozens immediately, hundreds in the years that followed, and set in motion a chain of events that, depending on which scientific study you read, will affect health outcomes across Europe for generations. All of it traceable back to 1:23 in the morning, a safety test, a design flaw, a series of decisions made by men who could not have known what they were starting. Next episode, we go to Idaho Falls, 1961. 3 men, a reactor smaller than this room, and a control rod that should never have been touched.